Have you ever thought about how much your beard is worth? Not in terms of style or how it makes you look, but in actual, cold, hard cash. Today, we're diving into a wild story from history, where having a beard could literally cost you. We're talking about Peter the Great and his infamous beard tax. This isn't just a quirky historical fact. It's a tale about a powerful ruler dragging his country, kicking and screaming, into the modern era. So, let's set the scene. It's the late 17th century, and Russia is a vast, powerful, but deeply traditional country. While Western Europe was experiencing the Renaissance and the Age of Enlightenment with scientific breakthroughs, new philosophies, and evolving fashions, Russia was, to put it mildly, a bit behind the times. The nobility, known as the boyars, were fiercely proud of their long beards and traditional long-sleeved robes. For them, a beard wasn't just facial hair. It was a symbol of their Orthodox faith, their masculinity, and their Russian identity. In the Russian Orthodox tradition, a clean-shaven man was seen as heretical, almost unnatural. A popular saying was that God himself had a beard, so to shave was to deface the image of God in man. Into this world steps a young, towering, and incredibly ambitious Tsar, Peter I, soon to be known as Peter the Great. Peter wasn't your typical ruler. He was nearly 7 feet tall, full of restless energy, and obsessed with one thing: modernizing Russia. He knew that for Russia to compete with the powerful nations of the West, it needed to change, and fast. So, he did something unprecedented for a Russian Tsar. He embarked on a grand embassy to Western Europe. For over a year, he traveled, often incognito, through places like Holland and England. He wasn't there for fancy parties. He was there to learn. He worked as a shipbuilder, studied artillery, visited factories, and soaked up everything he could about Western technology, military tactics, and culture. When Peter returned to Russia in 1698, he was a man on a mission. He was horrified by what he now saw as the backwardness of his own court. The long beards and flowing robes that were once symbols of Russian pride, he now saw as symbols of stagnation. He believed they represented an old, outdated way of thinking that was holding Russia back. And Peter was not a man for subtle suggestions. The day after he returned, he held a grand reception for his nobles. Imagine the scene. The boyars are all gathered, probably expecting to hear tales of his travels. Instead, Peter pulls out a massive barber's razor. One by one, he personally, and very forcibly, shaved off the magnificent, cherished beards of his highest-ranking officials. Can you imagine the shock, the horror? These men, whose beards were their pride and joy, were being publicly dye-bearded by their own Tsar. It was a deeply humiliating and symbolic act. Peter was literally cutting away the old Russia to make way for the new. This dramatic public shaving was just the beginning. Peter knew he couldn't personally shave every man in Russia, so he introduced a law, the beard tax. If you wanted to keep your beard, you had to pay. And it wasn't cheap. The tax was tiered based on your social status. Wealthy merchants paid a hefty sum, while court officials and military men paid a slightly lower rate. Peasants and serfs were also taxed, though at a much smaller amount, every time they entered a city with a beard. Upon paying the tax, a man was given a special token, a sort of beard license. These tokens were made of copper or silver, and were inscribed with the image of a beard and nose on one side and the words, "The tax has been taken," or "the beard is a superfluous burden," on the other. You had to carry this token with you at all times to prove you had the right to wear your facial hair. If you were caught with a beard but without your token, guards were authorized to publicly and forcibly shave you on the spot. Now, you might think this is just a funny historical anecdote, but the reaction at the time was anything but amusing. For many Russians, this was a profound crisis. The tax was seen not just as a financial burden, but as a direct attack on their faith and their very identity. Religious leaders preached that shaving was a sin. Some old believers, a group of devout traditionalists, believed that paying the tax and keeping their beards was a deal with the devil. They preferred to face persecution, or even flee to the wilderness, rather than give up their beards or pay the tax. For them, a shaved face was the mark of a heretic, and they believed Peter the Great was the Antichrist, sent to destroy true Orthodox faith. But why was Peter so obsessed with beards? It wasn't just about fashion. For him, the beard was the ultimate symbol of the old, inward-looking, and, in his view, barbaric Russia he wanted to leave behind. He wanted his nobles and officials to look and act like their counterparts in Paris, London, and Amsterdam. A clean-shaven face, along with Western-style clothing, which he also mandated, was the uniform of his new, modernized Russia. It was a visual pledge of allegiance to his reforms and his vision for the country's future. The beard tax also served a very practical purpose. It raised money for the state. Peter was fighting long and expensive wars, most notably the Great Northern War against Sweden, and he was building a new capital city, St. Petersburg, from scratch on a swamp. He needed every kopeck he could get, and taxing something as personal as a beard was a creative, if controversial, way to fill the treasury. So, did it work? In a way, yes. Over time, clean-shaven faces did become the norm among the Russian aristocracy and in the cities. The sight of a bearded nobleman became increasingly rare. Peter's reforms, as forceful and brutal as they were, did set Russia on a new course. He built a powerful navy, reformed the army, streamlined the government, and established St. Petersburg as Russia's window to the West. However, the beard tax also created a deeper cultural divide. In the countryside, among the millions of peasants, beards remained common. The tax turned the beard into a clear marker of class and location. A clean-shaven man was likely a city dweller, a noble, or someone involved with the state. A bearded man was likely a peasant, a priest, or an old believer. This division between the westernized elite and the traditionalist masses would be a recurring theme in Russian history for centuries to come. The beard tax itself lasted for several decades. Long after Peter's death, it was finally abolished by Catherine the Great in 1772. By then, the culture had shifted so much that the law was no longer necessary among the elite. The fashion for clean-shaven faces, or at most a neat moustache, had taken hold. The story of Peter the Great's beard tax is more than just a bizarre historical footnote. It is a powerful example of how a single leader's vision can clash with a nation's traditions. It shows us that big changes often come with a high price, and that sometimes the most personal things, like the hair on your face, can become the battlefield for a nation's soul. It's a reminder that symbols matter, and that a revolution can begin with something as simple and as shocking as the snip of a razor. So next time you're shaving, or maybe admiring your own magnificent beard, take a moment to remember Peter the Great. It's a good thing we don't have to carry around a beard token today, right? Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this dive into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories you probably didn't learn in school. See you next time.